The moment you defend yourself, something shifts. Not in your favor. It feels logical. It feels fair. You want to correct the record, to explain what really happened. But the instant you start defending, you've already lost control. Because now you're reacting. Now you're positioning yourself below the accusation. Now you're trying to earn approval from someone who decided you were guilty before you spoke. Watch what happens when you explain yourself. People stop listening for truth. They listen for cracks. Every extra word sounds like uncertainty. Every clarification feels like anxiety. Every defense confirms that the attack landed. Power doesn't disappear loudly. It leaks out quietly through justification, tone changes, and emotional urgency. The uncomfortable truth is this. Strong people are rarely understood in the moment. Weak people rush to be. And the more you try to prove yourself, the more others decide you're not worth believing. It usually doesn't happen in dramatic confrontations. It happens in small moments. A comment that sounds harmless but isn't. A question that feels slightly off. A tone that implies doubt, not curiosity. Is that really what you meant? Why did you do it that way? So, you're saying this wasn't your fault? You feel it immediately. Something is being tested. So you respond the way you were taught to. You explain your intentions. You add context. You clarify details they didn't ask for. You want to be accurate. You want to be fair. You want to make sure there's no misunderstanding. But the room changes. Their posture relaxes. Their eyes narrow slightly. They interrupt you, not to understand, but to redirect. Now you're not talking to equal ground. You're talking upward. Your explanation becomes longer than the accusation. Your voice becomes faster, lighter, defensive. You start filling silences that weren't empty. They were pressure. And the more you speak, the more you sense it slipping. They don't say it out loud, but it's there. If you're so confident, why are you trying so hard? You notice the shift in respect before you can name it. The conversation is no longer about facts. It's about position. You're no longer deciding the pace. They are. They ask another question, then another. Each one framed to keep you responding, adjusting, proving. You start negotiating your own worth in real time. This is how people lose status without realizing it. Not through mistakes, but through reaction. Because once you accept the role of the one who must explain, you also accept the role of the one who can be judged. And judgment rarely ends where it begins. Here is where Stoicism cuts against instinct. Most people believe power comes from clarity, from being seen correctly, from making sure others get it. Stoics see the opposite. Power doesn't come from being understood. Power comes from not needing to be understood. The need to explain is not intellectual. It's emotional. It's the discomfort of sitting inside misinterpretation. The fear that silence might look like guilt. The urge to protect an image that feels under threat. But the Stoic understands something most people never notice. The moment you try to control how others see you, you hand them control over you. If your peace depends on their understanding, then their opinion owns you. Stoicism reframes the situation completely. It doesn't ask, how do I prove myself? It asks, why do I feel the need to? Because explanation is not neutral. It's a signal. It tells the other person their judgment matters more than your stability. It tells them their perception has authority over your internal state. And once that hierarchy is established, it rarely reverses. The Stoic doesn't rush to correct false narratives, not because they are indifferent, but because they understand timing and position. Truth does not need urgency. Only insecurity does. When you remain calm inside misunderstanding, you send a different message. You communicate that your identity is not up for negotiation, that your actions stand on their own. That time, not conversation, will resolve what needs to be resolved. This is uncomfortable for others. Silence removes the leverage they expected. No reaction means no emotional access. No defense means no opening. And without that opening, they're left with nothing to push against. Stoicism is not about being passive. It's about choosing where your energy goes. You don't correct every misinterpretation for the same reason you don't chase every barking dog. Not because you're above it, but because you understand how power actually moves. And power moves toward the one who can remain still while others demand a response. There is one rule Stoics follow with absolute discipline. Never defend your ego. Not your actions when they matter, not the truth when it's required. Your ego. Because the ego is what feels attacked. The ego is what wants to be seen as right, competent, respected. And the ego is what panics when that image is threatened. The Stoic watches that reaction and refuses to act on it. The moment you react emotionally, you validate the attack. Not with words, with posture, tone, urgency. You confirm that the accusation touched something fragile. You confirm that the other person found leverage. And once leverage exists, your position drops. This is why accusations escalate when you defend yourself. Have you noticed that? The first claim is vague. Your response is detailed. The next claim becomes sharper. Not because you're wrong, but because your reaction told them where to press. Stoics understand that attacks are rarely about truth. They're about control. People test boundaries by provoking emotion. If you react, they learn they can move you. If they can move you, they outrank you in that moment. Refusing to defend your ego removes the reward. No emotional shift, no verbal overcorrection, no urgency to restore image, just stability. This doesn't mean you stay silent forever. It means you don't react on their timeline. You don't defend yourself in the heat of accusation when emotions distort perception. You let the moment pass. You let behavior accumulate. You let patterns speak. Because ego defenses are loud. Authority is quiet. The Stoic knows something most people forget. You don't need to correct every insult to remain intact. Your value doesn't drop because someone questions it. But it does drop when you scramble to protect it. And once you stop defending your ego, something subtle happens. The attacks lose energy. The pressure collapses. The other person feels exposed, standing alone with their judgment unanswered. That silence isn't weakness, it's position. In practice, this rule looks almost boring. No dramatic silence, no visible defiance, just control. When you're questioned, you don't rush to fill the space. You let the silence sit longer than feels comfortable. Not to intimidate, but to avoid reacting. If a response is required, you keep it minimal, short, factual, without emotional framing. No backstory, no self-justification, no attempt to manage how it lands. Your tone stays even, your body stays still, your pace doesn't change. This is what controlled presence looks like. Most people expose themselves through excess. Too many words, too much explanation, too much concern about perception. You do the opposite. You let days pass without reopening the topic. You don't revisit it to clear the air. You don't follow up to make sure they understood. Instead, you let consistency do the work. You show up the same way tomorrow, and the next day, and the day after that. Your behavior stays aligned. Your performance doesn't shift. There's no visible effort to repair an image. Over time, something changes. The person who questioned you either adjusts or fades, because without reaction, they gain nothing from pushing. No emotional return, no sense of influence. And if the accusation was serious enough to matter, reality will surface it without your help. Facts don't need advocacy. Patterns don't need defense. This approach requires discipline. Not silence as a tactic, but silence as self-control. You're not withholding information to manipulate. You're withholding reaction to maintain position. When you speak, it's because it's necessary, not because you're uncomfortable. And when you stop explaining yourself, you notice something unsettling. People start watching more closely. They listen harder when you finally speak. And some stop questioning you at all. Not because you demanded respect, but because you never chased it. In the end, nothing dramatic happens. No confrontation, no final clarification. Life simply moves on. Some people revise their judgment quietly, others don't, and disappear from relevance. You don't correct them. You don't chase resolution. You don't need closure, because your position was never built on approval. Stoics don't defend themselves because time exposes what words only distort. Those who needed explanations were never watching closely enough anyway. And those who were never asked. Cold ending. Those who matter will see the truth without explanation. And those who demand defense were never in a position to judge you anyway. 152. Those who matter will see the truth without explanation. Not immediately, not emotionally, but inevitably. They watch patterns, not reactions. They notice consistency, not speeches. They understand without being convinced. And those who demand defense, the ones who press, provoke, and question your worth, were never in a position to judge you anyway. Their need for explanation is about control, not clarity. Their suspicion is a signal of insecurity, not authority. So you don't correct them. You don't resist them. You simply remain unchanged. Because in the long run, silence filters people faster than arguments ever could. And when the noise fades, only one thing is left standing: your position.